Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about STDs and STIs, a subject that a lot of people like to avoid. It's scary, it's embarrassing, most people think it's pretty painful. The truth is, the most common STI is the common cold, and a lot of us have gotten that from kissing, and some people have gotten mono, and there's no shame attached to that. And in fact, in a lot of society, I think it was before the 1950s, there really wasn't a lot of shame around some of the STDs. Like herpes was kind of made into this horrible thing that you could get, this STD, which proved that you were unclean, unsafe, whatever it was that they marketed this for. So I'm Cathy from the Intimacy Dojo, and I'm here with Ashley Manta from ashleymanta.com. We're talking about STDs. How are you doing?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I love how openly you talk about them, and you've done a lot of research into herpes. Would you like to tell us why?
Sure. I was diagnosed with genital herpes in October of 2009, actually after being sexually assaulted by a friend in July of 2009. So 2 months later, I started having really unpleasant symptoms, but I wasn't sure what it was because I wasn't very educated on what herpes was or what the symptoms were like. I thought it was razor burn. And I went to my health center on my campus, and she said, no, actually, it's herpes. And I was horrified at first. I thought that this was a relationship death sentence. I, shakily called the guy that I was seeing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just got diagnosed with herpes. I think I might have given it to you. I'm so sorry. And he was wonderful. He was very calm, and he said, baby, you are the same person today as you were yesterday. And now you just have one other thing about you. And it's okay.
That's beautiful.
And that was wonderful. It was my first step to really starting to accept the herpes as not something that was going to ruin my life.
Yeah.
And it was up and down. I went through rejection after he and I broke up, but eventually you kind of find a balance where you get comfortable with it. And it's a process, and it's hard, but it's really rewarding once you start to love yourself and even see the herpes as an opportunity to grow and to allow yourself to be vulnerable in a way that you might not otherwise.
I really appreciate you talking to us about it, because there's so much shame associated with it. People, if anyone talks about it, it's whispered to their doctor. It's not something people in general talk about. And I remember the first time I went, my first boyfriend cheated on me with another guy. And I went out, I was like, oh my God, what do I do? He had unsafe sex. And I went to get tested. I was like, I could hardly ask my doctor for the test. I was so embarrassed. And now I routinely get tested. And I like that. I like that feeling of knowing I can go to someone, I've been tested and here's the status. And that just feels really good. But there's so much shame. Most people don't get tested because they're afraid and they don't even know how to ask for stuff. So.
Absolutely. And people are afraid to talk with their partners about it. The problem with herpes especially is 9 out of 10 people that have it don't realize that they have it because they can be completely asymptomatic.
Yes.
And a lot of health centers don't routinely test for herpes. You actually have to ask for it. They usually test for the big four, which are chlamydia, gonorrhea, HIV, and syphilis. Mm-hmm. Pretty much any health center that's going to do a test is going to test for those 4. You have to ask to be tested for herpes. And some people, some organizations will only do testing when you have an outbreak, so they can scrape a sample of the sore and send it off to the lab for a serum test. And others will actually do a blood test called an IgG test. But it's expensive, especially if you don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are really afraid to even have that conversation with their doctor because if they're not hushing in whispered tones about herpes, it's the butt of a joke.
Yeah.
Everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas except herpes. Herpes has become the redhead stepchild of the STI world.
Yeah. But there's actually,
even though it's so common.
It is type 1, which is typically around the mouth, isn't it a third of the population has that one?
Yes.
And what's the percentage of people that have type 2, which is a genital herpes?
It is 20% of people ages 14 to 49 have genital herpes.
So that's
1 in 5.
Yeah. So it's amazing that that's so shameful when it's something that's so common. I think a lot of people don't want to know either, because then they'll have to have a conversation with their partners if they're ethical about it, and they don't know how to do that. And I love Reid Mihalko's difficult conversation formula. I'll put the link below the recording. And that's a great way to talk to your partner. If you just start modeling talking about these things, it can make a huge difference for your sexual life too, because you can talk about things that you would normally not talk about. Like, I really like it when you touch me gently when we first start out, and when you grab my clit and rub that hard, it's not comfortable. If you can't, once you start talking about things like herpes, talking about touch is a lot more open. So
it is.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We'd love to have you back to talk about some other topics.
Thank you. Anytime.